Hello friends. Golf is a game played in the rain. The only exception I would encourage you to observe is when there's lightning around. Not safe, but certainly playing in the rain is part of the game. And obviously I did a lot of it when I was a kid. In fact, when I was doing my apprenticeship and thereafter, about the only time I got to play golf was if it was raining, because otherwise I was busy teaching golf. So there are a few clues about how to hit. With the grass being wet, it's best to pick the ball clean because the ball tends to balloon a little, and we want to get a lower ball flight. So the other danger is, of course, that when you hit into the ground, it tends to hit in deeper, and that mishit is inconvenient. So suspend the club lightly touching the ground and pick the ball clean is just good policy when you're hitting. And we want a lower ball flight. So one, I would suggest using a softer ball because it's often quite cold as well. And use one that perhaps has a lower spin rate. That's actually helpful too. And very importantly, go for longer clubs because you want a lower trajectory. It's often associated with wind when it's raining. And it's just good policy. You can always swing slower or grip down the club. And it's just good to hit a lower trajectory. Now, with regard to the clubs, the big deal is to keep the grips dry. And so I have, of course, a cover on the bag, which is helpful, but I also put a big towel over the top to stop any rain getting down the shaft and onto the grip and to allow me to dry it before each shot. You can also wear gloves that have a sort of a non-slip surface. My friend John gave me those a few years ago, very handy. And then when it comes to flighting the ball, you can play the ball back in the stance, shorten the club, put the weight forward and hit the ball on a lower trajectory. Just that run is more helpful when it's wet. Now, obviously I have a rather wide brimmed hat here, which if it's windy is not the best choice, but I hated as a boy getting rain running down the back of the neck. So a little wider brim for me is actually a pleasant thing. And then when it gets to scoring, of course, once you get to the green, my experience was you couldn't predict a low chipping shot. So I would actually hit higher balls and just throw them most of the way to the hole. And of course, with the putting, just expect the ball to go slower. So you have to just get into the habit of hitting harder. And I would work on that with my practice stroke. Now, the remaining obstacle in golf, particularly associated with the wet, is the bunkers, because the sand is going to be compacted and wet, and it just doesn't react the way it does under normal conditions. So instead of taking a sand wedge, I would often take a less lofted one. Nowadays they call it a gap wedge, the same club that I used to call a pitching wedge, and I would open it less, and I would actually hit into the sand before the ball, which is not uncommon. But with that less bounce, I would get what in this country they call it the fares, shaved ice. I would actually create a bow wave of sand with the cutting edge ahead of the contact with the ball, and then everything would be thrown out. But it does come out lower and roll more. So figure that into your computation about where to aim and how hard to go. Golf in the rain. I'm very happy. There is an exception in the rules of golf that actually, to this day, allows one to, under these conditions, take a small cloth and wrap it round the grip and leave it there as you get ready and hit the ball. It's actually been there for 100 years, well, probably 100 years. And it actually helps when it's really wet. Now it's time to head inside for a glass of something.